In an elegant residence, a couple is engaged in intimacy. When the woman momentarily leaves to fetch a glass of water, she comes back to discover the man absent. Concerned, she starts looking for him and eventually locates him in the bathtub, drenched in blood. Her scream pierces the air as she notices a hand reaching out to grab her. In the scenic coastal beauty of California, Ellie Warren, a successful attorney, resides with her husband Marcus, who is recovering from a serious car accident. They've recently relocated from San Francisco to a tranquil coastal home now that their daughter Brittany has started college. As they reflect on their decision, Marcus assures Ellie that they've made the right move. At the office, Ellie's boss Janice urges her to reconsider her plan to leave and start her own practice, suggesting she stay on after completing the current case. Janice introduces the firm's new tech consultant, David Hammond, much to Ellie's surprise, as she recognizes him from their college days. During a meeting, the firm delves into a case where a client alleges their patents have been unlawfully taken. Janice tasks David with locating emails as evidence of the theft, a task he swiftly accomplishes. Later, David suggests catching up over drinks, but she already had plans with her friend Courtney. Ellie extended the invitation to include him along with her friend. However, Courtney's work commitments force Ellie to have drinks alone with David instead. They sat to have a drink and they discussed their personal lives, with Ellie revealing she has a daughter in college and David disclosing his divorced status with no children. Ellie reflects on the feeling of waking up next to a spouse who feels like a stranger after years together, prompting David to reassure her about Marcus's continued attraction to her. As they catch up, they went to the bar to have a shot while they reminisce about their past, sharing a toast to their friendship and speculating on what could have been if circumstances were different. They talk about why they never dated in college. David admits to knowing about Ellie before joining the firm, expressing his desire to reconnect with her. After dancing intimately, Ellie becomes overwhelmed and retreats to the bathroom. David seeks her out and their encounter escalates into kissing. They nearly went further, but Ellie abruptly stops, feeling conflicted. When David follows her outside, Ellie insists on leaving, feeling guilty about their interaction. David, acknowledging their mistake, expresses regret. Returning home, Ellie receives a text from David asking for her forgiveness. Despite David's persistent calls, Ellie focuses on strengthening her relationship with Marcus. She also takes steps to establish her new firm by securing an office space. David visits his therapist and shares that he's doing well, mentioning that he's seeing someone romantically. During their session, he discloses that he initially sought therapy as part of court-ordered anger management following an altercation involving someone named Deborah. During fall break, Brittany returns home and Ellie and Marcus eagerly show her around their house. David approaches Ellie outside of work, mentioning he saw her from a nearby meeting and apologizes for their previous encounter. Ellie assures him it's fine but declines his offer for coffee due to being married. Despite David's persistence, Ellie firmly reiterates her marital status and leaves, expressing her need to wait for a moment before departing. At home, Ellie finds herself inundated with calls and texts from David, prompting her to block his number. Later, she and Marcus share an intimate moment together. Unbeknownst to them, David lurks outside their window, observing their intimacy. The next day, Marcus surprises Ellie at her firm with flowers. They share a tender moment, but their affection is interrupted when a client arrives, and Marcus has to leave. Before leaving, Ellie reminds him about their dinner plans with Courtney later that evening. A young man arrives at their house, and Marcus inquires if he's there to see their daughter. The boy acknowledges that he's there for Brittany. Brittany goes on a date with him. Ellie and Marcus invite Courtney over for dinner, but Ellie is taken aback when Courtney arrives with David as her plus one. David, who is dating Courtney, feigns ignorance of Ellie's identity, and she reluctantly plays along. They talked about their work and private life. Later, Ellie confronts David privately, expressing her discomfort and demanding that he never intrude on her family again. She instructs him to leave, and David complies, making an excuse to depart. Ellie discovers a package on her deck addressed to Marcus. Unable to reach Courtney, she decides to confront David instead. At the restaurant, Ellie confronts David, expressing her anger and disappointment. She accuses him of seducing her friend, showing up uninvited at her house, and crossing boundaries. David tries to downplay their encounter, suggesting they keep it discreet, but Ellie firmly denies any us between them. When David hints at the possibility of telling her husband, Ellie warns him against it. She insists that their past night together was a mistake and demands that he stay away from her, her family, and Courtney. He snaps at her and calls Deborah, leaving her confused. She tries to reason with him, asking to leave their past behind and urging him to stop his advances. Finally, she firmly tells him to leave her alone. She gives him the record he left for her in the package, and he snaps it in half. Courtney confronts Ellie, revealing that David told her everything during their drive back. According to David, Ellie supposedly attempted to seduce him, but he rejected her advances. Courtney shows Ellie texts that seem to support David's claim. However, Ellie explains that David is a hacker and likely fabricated the messages. Despite Ellie's explanation, Courtney refuses to believe her and storms out in disbelief. Ellie visits an old college friend who reveals that David had been obsessed with her during their college years, a fact Ellie had no recollection of. Additionally, Ellie learns that David's ex-wife Deborah bore a striking resemblance to her. Deborah had confided in the friend about David's possessiveness and jealousy. Tragically, Deborah passed away in a violent incident shortly after their divorce. Despite suspicions, the police ultimately ruled it as a robbery. Ellie is left stunned by this revelation and begins to contemplate its implications. During the night, David unlawfully enters Ellie's home, searching through her belongings while she sleeps unaware. Brittany returns home, almost encountering David in the process, but narrowly escapes detection. Ellie persistently tries to contact Courtney, but receives no response. Later, she is shocked to receive a video message from David containing hacked surveillance footage of their dancing at the club. Ellie confronts David over the phone, demanding to know how he obtained the surveillance footage. David arrogantly responds, claiming that if he could hack into a top email service provider for her, hacking a nightclub was child's play. Ellie threatens to involve the police and obtain a restraining order against him. In retaliation, David hints at exposing the video to Marcus. Despite Ellie's resistance, David refuses to give up on their relationship, leaving Ellie feeling helpless as he ends the call. Ellie, unaware of David's further intrusion into her life, sends Courtney an email detailing information about Deborah's murder and implicating David as the likely perpetrator. However, Courtney, who was with David at the time, becomes distracted by a gift from him before opening the email. She leaves to try on the lingerie David bought for her, allowing him to intercept and delete the incriminating email before she can see it. Ellie begins following David, but she was horrified by the sight of David golfing with Marcus. Ellie becomes increasingly suspicious of his intentions. She manages to gain access to David's apartment with the help of the concierge, where she discovers unsettling photos of Deborah and herself on his computer. Caught off guard by David's unexpected return home, Ellie hides in a panic. Fortunately, David leaves again after receiving a call from Courtney, who requests him to come. Seizing the opportunity, Ellie makes her escape before David returns. Ellie calls Courtney and insists that she believes David is responsible for his wife's death. Courtney, still skeptical, demands evidence. Ellie reveals that she found incriminating photos of herself in David's apartment, proving he has been monitoring her. Ellie pleads with Courtney to take her warning seriously, but their conversation is cut short by a knock on Courtney's door. David arrives at her place. While browsing through David's phone, Courtney discovers alarming photos of Ellie. However, before she can process the implications, David catches her in the act. In a fit of rage, he attacks her, leaving Courtney in a perilous situation. Panicked and fearing the worst, Ellie rushes to Courtney's place only to find her friend unconscious and bleeding from the head. She quickly calls for medical assistance, and Courtney is rushed to the hospital for urgent treatment. Meanwhile, the police arrive at the scene and inform Ellie that they are actively searching for David in connection with the assault on Courtney. Marcus came and asked what was happening. The police told him about Courtney. Ellie told him she will tell him everything when they go home. At home, Ellie recounts the entire ordeal to Marcus, who reacts with a mixture of anger and sadness. He struggles to comprehend how David managed to infiltrate their lives without his knowledge. Marcus questions why Ellie never mentioned David before and expresses hurt over the betrayal. Ellie admits her mistake in not confiding in him earlier, and apologizes for the pain she's caused. Marcus, feeling hurt and bewildered, wonders why Ellie couldn't communicate with him about their issues. Despite the turmoil, Ellie reassures Marcus of her love for him and their life together. In a disturbing turn of events, David resorts to extreme measures to evade capture. He targets a homeless man, setting him on fire and leaving behind a forged suicide note, effectively staging his own death. The police came to update Ellie and Marcus on the investigation and the body that they found. She informed them that the use of an accelerant in the incident will complicate DNA tests and dental reconstructions. However, the handwriting on the suicide note and the clothing on the body suggest a match for David. Additionally, searches on David's computer indicate suicidal intentions. The police also reveal that David left a voicemail for his therapist confessing to his actions, including his ex-wife's murder. Ellie is shocked by the news, but appreciates the closure it brings. Ellie also inquires about Courtney's condition, and the detective reassures her that Courtney is recovering and should be ready to receive visitors soon. After confronting their issues and finding closure in the aftermath of David's actions, Marcus and Ellie decide to move forward together. They have heartfelt conversations, addressing their past mistakes and reaffirming their commitment to each other. With renewed understanding and love, they agree to start afresh, determined to rebuild their relationship and return to a state of happiness and normalcy. Ellie stops by her office to sign some documents. In a chilling turn of events, Ellie discovers her assistant murdered in her office, prompting a panicked call from David, who ominously accuses Ellie of leaving them alone. Frantic and fearing for her family's safety, Ellie rushes home, calling the police en route. Upon arrival, she finds Brittany's boyfriend, Scott, dead, but Marcus and Brittany are nowhere to be found. In a harrowing showdown, David appears and makes a twisted offer for a new life with Ellie. As tension escalates, Ellie is forced to defend herself and her family, and then incapacitates David with a vase. Ellie locates Marcus and Brittany tied up and manages to free them just as the police arrive. However, their relief is short-lived as they discover the officer has been killed. David launches another attack, but Ellie and Marcus act quickly to protect Brittany, instructing her to drive away to safety. In a fierce confrontation, Marcus confronts David, but tragically, David gains the upper hand, pushing Marcus over a balcony. In a desperate bid to protect herself and her family, Ellie stabs David in the chest, incapacitating him momentarily. As Marcus and Ellie flee to the beach, David manages to retrieve the dead cop's gun from the police car. Confronted by David once more, a tense struggle ensues at the edge of the cliff. In the chaos, David loses his footing and falls over the edge. Ellie, torn between mercy and justice, reaches out to save him, but David slips from her grasp and plunges to his demise on the beach below. 2 months pass, and Marcus and Ellie find solace in their newfound safety and happiness. With the ordeal finally behind them, they bid farewell to the traumatic memories by sending Brittany back to school. They're prepared to sell their house, symbolizing a fresh start and a definitive break from the past. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Watch our next videos on the screen, and don't forget for more amazing recaps. See you on the next one.